The fleet was bleeding credits. Every single day the numbers came in, and every single day the total grew worse. 7 million credits vanished in repairs, delays, and strange malfunctions. The alien officers stared at their glowing reports in silence. Engines failed, cargo spoiled, ships were grounded, and no one could explain why. Commander Thalos stood inside the flagship's control chamber, his long silver tendrils curling with frustration. 7 million. Every day, he whispered. If this continues, the Council will shut us down. We will be disgraced. Around him, alien engineers shifted nervously. Their tools were advanced, their machines precise, but their results were empty. They had checked every calculation twice and every scan 3 times, yet the losses continued. Nothing made sense. A small sound broke the silence, boots against metal. It was the human. He walked into the chamber wearing a simple jumpsuit, grease stains on the sleeves. His name was Daniel Cole, but most of the fleet only called him the Mechanic. Compared to the tall, shining aliens, he looked ordinary, even fragile. One alien officer frowned. Why is he here? This is not a problem for primitive hands. But Commander Thalos raised a tendril for silence. No one else has found the cause. Perhaps a different view is what we need. Daniel didn't salute, didn't bow, didn't act impressed by the glowing walls of the chamber. He simply folded his arms. You're losing 7 million credits a day, right? The aliens nodded stiffly. Then let me look, he said. Give me until lunch. If I can't find the problem before then, you can throw me out the nearest airlock. The room went silent. Some of the aliens hissed in shock. One engineer leaned close to another and whispered, "Humans are reckless. He will fail, and we will waste more time." But Daniel didn't care about their whispers. He grabbed a small toolkit from his belt and left the chamber without waiting for permission. The alien engineers followed him, more out of curiosity than respect. Daniel didn't begin with the main consoles or the advanced scanners. Instead, he crouched beside a fuel line, pressed his hand against the pipe, and listened. One alien scoffed. "What is he doing? Our sensors have scanned those pipes 100 times. Daniel ignored the comment. He tapped the pipe with a wrench, leaned closer, and closed his eyes. He was listening to the vibration, feeling the rhythm. After a moment he muttered, "Strange, too soft." He moved again, crawling under a power conduit, shining a small flashlight into a narrow gap. Aliens hovered above, uncomfortable at the sight of him squeezing into spaces no officer would ever enter. Daniel grunted, pulled himself out, and wiped grease across his cheek. "Your scanners are looking for problems too big," he said. "But sometimes the smallest leak costs the most." The aliens didn't understand. To them, problems were solved with data streams, precise scans, and flawless technology. But Daniel's way was different. It was rough, dirty, human. Hours passed. The commander grew restless. Engineers whispered about the human's failure. Yet Daniel kept moving, checking bolts by hand, tracing wires, even sniffing the air for chemical traces. It looked like madness. Finally, Daniel stopped near the engine bay. He crouched low, running his fingers across the floor where coolant pipes ran beneath. His hand paused. Slowly, he pressed his ear against the cold metal. A faint vibration pulsed there, different from the rest. Too faint for scanners, but strong enough for a trained ear. Daniel smiled. "Found you." The aliens leaned closer. "Found what?" He stood and brushed dust from his jumpsuit. "The reason you're losing 7 million a day, a leak. Small enough that your scanners ignore it, but big enough that it bleeds your whole system dry." The aliens froze. Could it be that simple? Daniel nodded at their shocked faces. "You've been searching for a supernova, but all along it was just a drip. Small things sink big ships." Commander Thalos lowered his tendrils, staring at the mechanic. No one else had even come close to solving the mystery, but Daniel wasn't done. His eyes narrowed as he traced the pipe with his fingers. The cut in the metal was too clean, too deliberate. This wasn't an accident. He stood and looked at the commander. "This leak isn't natural. Someone made it." The chamber filled with a heavy silence. A hidden hand was draining the fleet's lifeblood, bleeding millions in credits. Daniel's voice was calm, almost casual. "You've got sabotage on your hands. And if I'm right, the saboteur is still here, watching us." The aliens shifted nervously, eyes flicking toward one another. Trust cracked like glass. Commander Thalos's voice was low and sharp. "Human, are you certain?" Daniel shrugged. I told you. Give me till lunch. And it's not lunch yet. He turned back toward the humming pipes, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. The aliens followed, silent now, waiting to see what this strange human would uncover next. And deep inside the fleet's engines, hidden in places no scanner could reach, something waited. First signs of ingenuity. Daniel worked quickly, moving with confidence while the alien engineers hovered behind him like tall shadows. Their glowing eyes tracked his every move, but their expressions showed only doubt. He crouched near the coolant pipes again, tapping the metal with his wrench. The hollow sound echoed down the passage, sharp and uneven. Daniel frowned. Doesn't sound right, he muttered. An alien officer scoffed. Sound? You are judging our fleet systems by sound? Daniel glanced up, smirking. Your scanners missed this leak. My ears didn't. Sometimes the old ways work better. The aliens exchanged uneasy looks. They were trained to trust machines, not human senses. To them, Daniel's method seemed primitive, even laughable. But the human mechanic kept working, wiping dust from pipes, pressing his ear against humming conduits, tracing wires with his bare hands. He paused again, pulling a small magnet from his pocket. It was scratched and dirty, a simple tool by alien standards. The engineers stared as Daniel sprinkled a pinch of black powder across the floor, letting the magnet guide the dust in strange patterns. The powder shifted, dancing toward an invisible current. Daniel nodded. Thought so. Someone rerouted your flow. What flow? One alien asked. The current in your coolant system, Daniel explained. See that line of dust? It's being pulled toward a hidden conduit. That means power's bleeding somewhere it shouldn't. The aliens bent closer, their eyes widening. The scanners had shown no abnormal readings, but the human had revealed a hidden pathway with nothing more than powder and a magnet. Commander Thalos watched silently. His tendrils curled slowly, a sign of deep thought. Hours slipped away as Daniel moved through the ship. He checked connectors by tapping them, sniffed the air for burned wires, even licked his finger and touched it to a metal plate to feel the temperature. Every action seemed too crude for a fleet worth billions of credits. And yet, with each step, he uncovered small irregularities, tiny signs that something was wrong beneath the surface. The aliens grew restless. This is madness, one engineer whispered. He crawls in the dirt like a child. Perhaps, Commander Thalos answered, but no one else has found anything. Watch him! Daniel crawled into another narrow space, flashlight clamped between his teeth. His voice echoed from inside. You've got loose wiring here. Could short the whole system. The alien engineers frowned. But our diagnostics show nothing unusual. Daniel slid out, dust clinging to his jumpsuit. That's the point. Your diagnostics are looking for big explosions. This ship is dying from 1,000 paper cuts. He wiped his greasy hands on a rag, leaving black smudges across the cloth. Then he looked at the group, his eyes sharp. You've been thinking like machines. You need to think like people. The commander tilted his head. Explain. Daniel stood holding up the rag. Machines don't make mistakes. People do. Someone touched this system. Someone cut these pipes, rerouted these lines and covered it up so your scanners wouldn't notice. The words hit the aliens like a shockwave. A whisper of betrayal spread through the group. Could one of their own have done this? One engineer hissed. Impossible. No officer of this fleet would betray us. Daniel raised an eyebrow. Then how do you explain this? He pointed at the pipe again. Under the dim light, the cut was clear, clean, precise, and deliberate. Not corrosion, not accident. A blade had done this. The aliens fell silent. Daniel kept moving, chasing the trail. Each clue was smaller than the last. A faint smell of coolant, a scratch across a panel, a patch of insulation that didn't match the rest. The human pieced them together like fragments of a puzzle. The aliens watched him with a mixture of disbelief and unease. How could one human mechanic see what entire teams of trained engineers had missed? Finally, Daniel stopped in front of a junction box. He pulled a screwdriver from his kit, twisted the screws loose and lifted the cover. Inside, a small device blinked with faint red light. The aliens gasped. What is that? Commander Thalos demanded. Daniel leaned closer, studying the wires. A siphon. tiny, almost invisible. It reroutes your power flow and bleeds credits every time you run a system check. You've been paying for repairs that were never needed. The commander's eyes glowed brighter. Sabotage, Daniel nodded slowly. And smart sabotage. Whoever did this knew your scanners well enough to trick them. They didn't expect someone to come along with nothing but a wrench, a magnet, and a pair of ears. The room grew tense. The realization was spreading. There was a traitor among them. One alien officer hissed, his voice trembling. If this is true, then we are not only bleeding credits, we are feeding our enemies. Daniel closed the box and stood. Exactly. Someone is draining you. But don't worry, I'll find the rest. The aliens stared at him, their doubt slowly turning into something else, respect, maybe even fear. Commander Thalos stepped forward. Human mechanic, he said softly. You have shown us what our best could not. But this sabotage, it is dangerous. Are you certain you can solve it? Daniel smirked, tucking his screwdriver back into his belt. I told you already, Commander. Give me until lunch. His voice was calm, but his eyes were sharp. He knew the real battle wasn't against broken pipes or faulty wires. It was against someone on the inside, someone clever enough to hide from the most advanced scanners in the galaxy. Daniel lifted his flashlight and turned down the next corridor. The aliens followed, their footsteps echoing in the silence, and somewhere in the shadows, the saboteur was watching. The hidden sabotage, the corridors of the flagship stretched long and silent as Daniel moved deeper into the ship. The aliens followed behind him, their glowing eyes uneasy, their steps sharp against the metal floor. The air smelled faintly of coolant and burnt insulation, a smell Daniel knew too well. He stopped at another junction panel and ran his fingers across the edges. The surface felt too smooth, too clean. Someone had been here recently. He pulled out his screwdriver, opened the panel, and revealed more wires that did not belong. Another siphon. Tiny, hidden, designed to feed energy into nothingness. Daniel muttered. They built a network of these things. The aliens leaned closer, shock running through them. One officer whispered, "How could this escape our scans?" "This is impossible," Daniel shook his head. "Not impossible. Just careful. Whoever planted these knew exactly how your scanners work. They left no digital trace, no alarms, just a slow bleed." He tapped the small device with the end of his wrench. "It's brilliant sabotage. Almost invisible, almost." Commander Thalos's tendrils curled in thought. If these devices are across the fleet, then our losses may be even worse than we feared. Daniel gave a short nod. "I'd bet every ship has them. That's why the numbers don't add up. And if you don't stop it soon, you'll lose more than credits. These siphons can destabilize your systems. Engines, shields, even life support." The aliens stiffened. The idea of their advanced fleet, pride of their civilization, falling apart because of hidden sabotage, filled them with fear. One engineer whispered, "Who would do this?" Daniel's eyes narrowed. He wiped his greasy hands on his jumpsuit and said flatly, "Someone who knows this fleet better than anyone. Someone who wants you to collapse from the inside." The group moved on, following Daniel as he traced the trail of hidden devices. Each one was carefully placed in areas no alien officer ever checked. Ventilation shafts, under coolant lines, behind heavy plating. Daniel climbed, crawled, and slid into places that looked far too small for him, but he came out each time with another device in his hands. By the time he had collected 5, the aliens had stopped doubting him. They were silent now, their faces grim. Daniel lined the devices on the floor. Their lights blinked faintly like red eyes staring back at them. He knelt, studying them. "This isn't random sabotage," he said. "It's coordinated. Whoever planted these wasn't just stealing money. They were preparing something bigger." The words hung heavy in the air. Suddenly the lights above flickered. The floor vibrated, a deep rumble moving through the ship. Alarms blared, sharp and piercing. The aliens jumped, their voices rising in panic. "Engine instability detected," a voice shouted from the control system. "Cooling levels critical." Daniel grabbed one of the blinking devices. It started. The sabotage is triggering chain reactions. The commander barked orders, his voice harsh. "Stabilize the engines. Seal all coolant lines." Alien engineers rushed in every direction, their hands flying over glowing panels. But the alarms kept screaming. Daniel moved faster than all of them. He sprinted to the nearest panel, yanked off the cover, and shoved his hands inside the maze of wires. Sparks burst, lighting his face. The aliens gasped. No one dared touch live wires without protective suits. Daniel gritted his teeth and cut a line with his pliers. The alarms dulled, the rumble slowed. He wiped sweat from his forehead. That should buy us time. But whoever did this knew exactly when to trigger it. They're watching. The commander's voice dropped to a low growl. Do you mean the saboteur is here? On this ship? Daniel looked at him calmly. Where else would they be? Silence spread. Every alien officer in the room suddenly looked suspicious to the others. Their eyes darted back and forth, tendrils twitching nervously. Trust was collapsing as fast as their systems. Daniel crouched beside the blinking devices, studying them again. His voice was steady, but his words were sharp. This wasn't meant to be caught. Whoever built these wanted you to lose until you couldn't recover. They almost succeeded, one engineer's voice cracked. And if you hadn't found them? Daniel shrugged. You'd be 7 million poorer by dinner. And dead by the end of the week. The aliens shuddered, but Daniel wasn't finished. He leaned back against the wall, his eyes narrowing. This kind of sabotage takes planning, tools, access, and time. Which means your traitor isn't just some low worker. They're high up, someone with clearance. The words landed like a blade. Several officers hissed angrily, their voices overlapping. Impossible. A lie. He accuses us without proof. Daniel stood, holding one of the blinking devices. He tossed it lightly in his hand, then caught it again. Proof? You want proof? Fine, keep watching. I'll find the rest before lunch. And when I do, your traitor won't be able to hide anymore. The commander stepped closer, towering over him. His glowing eyes locked on Daniel's face. For a moment, the human looked small beneath the alien's massive frame. But Daniel didn't flinch. His voice stayed calm. You asked me to find the problem. I found it. Now the real question is, what are you going to do when I point at the traitor? The chamber went silent. The commander slowly pulled back, his tendrils curling in tension. Then find them, human. Expose them, before this fleet collapses. Daniel nodded once, slipping his flashlight back into his belt. His eyes swept the officers in the room. Some stared at him with fear, others with hate. Somewhere among them the saboteur was hiding. He smirked, muttering under his breath. Let's see how clever you really are. And with that, the human mechanic walked deeper into the shadows of the ship, the aliens trailing behind, their fear growing with every step. The showdown. The flagship's corridors grew colder, darker, as if the ship itself knew the truth now. Daniel walked at the front, his flashlight beam cutting through the shadows. Behind him, the aliens followed in silence. None of them spoke. None of them trusted each other anymore. Daniel stopped near the main reactor doors. He crouched, pressing his hand to the floor. The faint hum beneath his palm was uneven, trembling. He looked up. Another device is close. And this one's big. The alien stiffened. Their glowing eyes darted toward the reactor. If a siphon was hidden there, the entire fleet was in danger. Commander Thalos gave a sharp order. Open the chamber. The heavy doors hissed apart. Inside, the reactor core pulsed with light, huge and alive, bathing the chamber in a blue glow. Daniel stepped forward slowly, eyes scanning every pipe, every panel, every shadow. His gut told him this was the heart of it all. He climbed onto a maintenance platform and crouched near a junction. His wrench tapped metal, soft at first, then sharper. He paused. His flashlight beam caught a faint red blink deep inside the pipes. There, he whispered. The aliens leaned closer. Another siphon? Daniel's face was grim. Not just another. This is the main one. It's feeding off your core. Gasps filled the chamber. If this device went active, it could overload the reactor, tearing the flagship apart and crippling the entire fleet. Daniel reached into the narrow gap, his fingers brushing the cold metal. He pulled, twisted, and dragged the device free. It was larger than the others, its lights blinking faster, more urgent. He held it up. Here's your traitor's masterpiece. The commander's tendrils curled tight. Who placed it? Daniel scanned the aliens standing around him. Their faces were stiff, unreadable. Then his eyes narrowed. One officer, a tall alien with green skin and sharp golden eyes, stepped back slightly. Too slightly. Daniel smiled without humor. "It was you," the officer hissed, his tendrils whipping. "Lies, I demand proof." Daniel tossed the device from one hand to the other, catching it lazily. "You know what gives you away? Access. Only someone with reactor clearance could have planted this. And the cut on the coolant pipe earlier, it was done with a tool that leaves a serrated edge." I checked. Guess who carries that tool on his belt? All eyes turned to the officer. His belt shimmered with silver tools, including the exact serrated cutter Daniel described. The chamber filled with whispers. The officer's voice broke with anger. "This human tricks you. He twists shadows into truth." Daniel stepped closer, his voice calm, steady. "You've been bleeding them for weeks. Stealing credits, sabotaging systems, waiting to watch the whole fleet collapse. Am I wrong?" The alien's golden eyes flashed. His silence was the answer. Suddenly he lunged. His long arms swung, aiming to knock Daniel across the chamber. The alien shouted, but Daniel ducked, rolling aside as the officer's strike smashed sparks from a console. Daniel came up fast, wrench in hand. He wasn't strong compared to the towering alien, but he was fast, precise. He slammed the wrench against the saboteur's wrist, forcing him to drop the cutter. The alien roared, claws flashing. Daniel backed up, dodging left and right, every move sharp and controlled. The chamber shook with the fight, human against alien, wrench against claws. The aliens watched, frozen. They had never seen combat like this, not inside their pristine fleet. Daniel finally swung his wrench hard across the saboteur's head. The alien staggered, hissing in pain. Daniel pressed the wrench under his chin, forcing him back toward the glowing reactor. "Go ahead," Daniel said quietly. "Keep fighting, but if you do, we'll all know exactly who you are." The commander's voice thundered. "Enough!" Alien guards rushed forward, seizing the traitor's arms. He fought, thrashing, but the guards pinned him to the floor. His golden eyes burned with hatred as he spat at Daniel. "Human filth! You don't belong here. You ruined everything." Daniel wiped sweat from his brow, his chest rising and falling. He crouched and placed the large siphon device on the floor beside the traitor. Its red lights blinked like a heartbeat. "You almost destroyed your own fleet," Daniel said. "Why?" the traitor hissed. "Because this fleet is weak. We were never meant to serve the Council. I gave our secrets to those who will rise." The aliens murmured in horror. "Treason. Betrayal." Commander Thalos moved closer, his towering form shadowing the traitor. "Your name will be erased from our history. You will never be remembered except as the one who failed." The guards dragged the traitor away, his hisses echoing down the corridor. Daniel stood, rolling his shoulders. His jumpsuit was torn, his hands dirty, but his eyes were sharp. He looked at the commander. "That's the last big one. You should be safe now." The commander tilted his head. "You found the problem. You exposed the traitor. And you saved the fleet." Daniel smirked, tucking the wrench back into his belt. "Told you I'd get it done before lunch." The aliens stared at him, some still shocked, others finally realizing the truth. This ordinary human mechanic, with nothing but basic tools and stubborn grit, had done what their most advanced machines could not. But Daniel wasn't smiling for long. He looked back at the reactor, his voice low. "One traitor's gone, but who else knew? Who else helped?" The commander's tendrils stiffened. The question hung heavy in the chamber. The fleet was saved. For now. But the shadow of betrayal still lingered, and Daniel knew the fight wasn't over. The human touch, the traitor's screams faded as the guards dragged him down the long corridor. The heavy doors closed behind him, and silence filled the reactor chamber. Only the steady hum of the ship's core remained, calm once again. Daniel stood still, his wrench hanging loosely from his hand. His clothes were smeared with oil and dust, his hair damp with sweat. He looked tired, but his eyes stayed sharp. The alien officers watched him in silence. For the first time, there was no mockery in their eyes. No one called him primitive now. Commander Thalos stepped forward, his silver tendrils shifting slowly. "You solved what our finest minds could not," he said. His deep voice carried through the chamber. 7 million credits bled from us every day, and with your hands, your tools, and your stubbornness, you stopped it. Daniel gave a short shrug. Didn't want to miss lunch. The aliens blinked in confusion at his casual tone. But the commander's tendrils curled with something new. Respect. One of the engineers leaned closer to another and whispered, "He fixed what scanners could not. He saw what we did not. Another alien answered softly. No. He heard it, he felt it. Machines cannot do what he did. Daniel wiped his hands on a rag, leaving black streaks across the fabric. He crouched near the reactor, running one last check on the pipes. It should hold, he said, but you'll want to keep an eye out. Sabotage this clean doesn't happen without planning. Someone else might try again. The aliens exchanged uneasy glances. Their world was built on machines, data, and flawless systems. But today, a single human with a wrench had proven that sometimes the best defense was not perfect technology, it was human instinct. Commander Thalos turned to his officers. Remember this day, not for our failure, but for what we learned. Technology alone is not enough. We need more eyes, more ways of thinking. He looked back at Daniel. More humans. Daniel smirked faintly. Careful what you wish for. We're not exactly easy house guests. Some of the aliens actually chuckled, the sound strange but genuine. The tension in the chamber softened. A guard entered and saluted the commander. The traitor is secured. He will face trial for treason. Commander Thalos gave a firm nod. Good. Let the council know the fleet is safe again. The guard left, and the chamber grew quiet once more. Daniel leaned against the wall, crossing his arms. So that's it then. Problem solved. The commander tilted his head. Yes, but not by us. By you. The human mechanic looked at the floor for a moment. His voice was softer now. You think I did something special. But back home I was just a guy who fixed broken engines. My father used to say, machines always tell the truth. You just have to listen. That's all I did here. I listened. The aliens absorbed his words carefully. Simple, plain, but powerful. The commander lowered himself slightly, a gesture of deep respect in his culture. You are no ordinary mechanic, Daniel Cole. You reminded us of something we had forgotten, that even the smallest hands can stop the greatest disaster. Daniel looked away, embarrassed. I only wanted to keep your ships running, and maybe get some food before the canteen closes. The aliens laughed again, a strange metallic sound. But in that laughter, the fear and mistrust that had filled the fleet began to fade. Later, as Daniel walked back through the wide corridors of the flagship, he noticed the way the crew looked at him. Before, their eyes had been full of doubt and disdain. Now they stepped aside for him, nodding with quiet respect. A few even whispered his name. Not primitive, not outsider, but the human mechanic. Daniel shook his head and smiled. He never wanted glory, never wanted titles. He just wanted to fix what was broken. That was who he was. By the time he reached the canteen, the alarms had gone silent, the ship steady once more. He sat at a table, a tray of food in front of him. As he lifted his fork, Commander Thalos entered and stood nearby. You truly finished before lunch, the commander said. Daniel smirked, chewing. Told you I would. The commander's tendrils shifted again, almost like a smile. Perhaps humans are not what we believed. Perhaps you are more. Daniel swallowed his food and leaned back in his chair. We're not perfect. We make mistakes. But sometimes, we fix things no one else can. The commander bowed his head. The council will hear of this. Humanity will not be ignored any longer. Daniel looked out the viewport. Stars glittered against the darkness, endless and bright. His voice was low, thoughtful. Doesn't matter who gets the credit. What matters is that the fleet is safe. And tomorrow, if something else breaks, I'll fix that too. The commander stared at him for a long moment, then left the canteen without another word. Daniel finished his lunch in silence. Outside the window, the massive fleet drifted through space. Alive and whole again, and somewhere deep in the galaxy. Enemies who thought the alien fleet was collapsing would soon learn the truth, because one human mechanic had refused to give up before lunch.